we fervently ask for your fatherly notice for our federal convention. For all those involved, favor them every day with your immediate presence. Be thou their wisdom and their strength. Enable them and us to devise such measures as may prove happily instrumental for the healing of all divisions and promoting the good of the great whole, that the United States of America may furnish the world with one example of a free and permanent government. May we continue under the influence of republic virtue to partake of all the blessings of cultivated and civilized society. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
And if you all would now stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I want to acknowledge a few special guests that we have with us today. First, we have Jerry Brouillette, who is a member of the Republican State Central Committee. Hi, Jerry. Thank you for joining us. We have Diane Cascio from the Attorney General's Office. We have Austin Lanclow, who is the Grassroots Engagement Director for Americans for Prosperity. Austin may have stepped outside. We have William Wallace with us, who is the host of the radio show, William Wallace for America. Thank you, William, for being here. We have Michael Chittum with us, who is a member of the board, I'll never get it right, Michael, of Parish Board Election Supervisors. Thank you, Kyle. Okay, and last but certainly not least, I want to really express sincere appreciation for our Secretary of State, Kyle Ardoin, for coming to this meeting. You know, there are leaders who just want to take the microphone and just be heard, and Kyle is really a servant leader, and I just so appreciate his pursuit of knowledge and truth and understanding, and his sensitivity to listen to his constituents and to make his own independent assessment of all the many factors he's got to take into consideration before we get some sort of new voting system that assures all of us that our election process is fair and secure. We thank you, Kyle, very much. Oh, I was just told Kathy Edmonston just walked in. Kathy, where are you? Oh, thank you so much for coming. Okay, thank you for being here. Kathy has been a tireless worker and a hero in this session's legislature, and we appreciate you very, very much. Thank you. And I did not mention Kyle's predecessor, but a dear friend personally and a friend of the club, Tom Shedler, our former Secretary of State. Okay, we only have one announcement before we go right in and connect with our speaker via Zoom. And if our first Vice President, Lynn Cox Graham, would come forward and make an announcement about our committees. Thank you, Lynn.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't mean to nag, but you will notice on your tables, there's a sheet with all of our committees listed and the committee chairman. And there's some slots underneath each chairperson where we would just love for you to volunteer for a committee today. And scattered throughout the tables, you'll find committee descriptions if you want more detail, or ask the chairperson of that committee. So please do that. We're trying to fill up because we've got a lot of work ahead of us to get things right. And don't forget, if you haven't paid your dues or if you want to be a new member or associate, we have these forms up at the table where you're registered. It's just $40 a year. Thank you.
Okay, I would like for Katie Alexander to please stand. I don't know where Katie is. Yay! Okay, I just want to acknowledge it is through Katie's diligence and her not taking no for an answer. She was actually the person who contacted Joe Oltman and got this thing going in the first place. And so she's a dynamo. We thank you and we love you, Katie. So glad you're here. Okay, with that, we are going to try to move into our Zoom meeting. And I don't think Joe Oltman really needs any introduction. I don't know how much you all know about Joe, but he has been interviewed by Eric Metaxas, by Michelle Malkin. He is a cybersecurity expert. He has become quite an activist based upon his research and findings about election security and, in particular, Dominion voting systems. And we are looking very, very forward to hearing his expertise on these subjects today. And with that, we'll say, hi, Joe, and we're welcome. We're so happy to see you.
Hey, glad to be able to join you guys. Thanks for having me. So if you're okay, I'll just, you want me to just start? I'll just start. That's
Yes,
yeah?
take it away. You start.
So my name is Joe Oltman. I'll kind of give you a little bit of a history behind me, and then, but I want to start by saying something. The election was not stolen. Trump lost. You're all just sore losers. Obviously, that's not true. But those are the things that we're being told over and over again in the market. Am I okay?
Watch out
I feel
behind.
like maybe there's something wrong. You guys hear me?
Yes, yeah. Can he see
No?
us?
No, that's how it has to go.
Can he see us?
No, Debbie's sitting there. No. Right.
You're not hungry?
I forgot to take out my Invisalign.
We won't look, just go down. I promise you. Do that. Nobody's paying attention, I promise.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can he see us?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to talk until somebody tells me that they can't hear me. All right. So my name again is Joe Oltman. I'll kind of give you a little bit of background on me. I've never been one to get involved in politics until recently. And I would probably separate me being in politics from what I really do, which is try to secure and return us to a place of sensibility inside of our communities. I'm an ex-tech CEO. I built a company on a cocktail napkin to where it is today. I now own 9 companies under 13 umbrellas. And until recently, that's what I ran. I was asked to step down as the CEO.
It's got to be turned back up.
You sound away.
Belinda, we can't hear him at all. Do you have the guy that from the
No,
AZ
he
place?
left. He left.
You should have written it down.
Yeah, he said he had to go.
There we go. It's gonna be okay.
Red. I got a real fish with the
I have a grilled fish. I have a grilled fish.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I have a grilled fish.
brown.
Okay. Tell me when you want me to go.
Go ahead and go.
Can you hear us?
Okay. So I hope you guys heard my introduction about me, but I got involved in things having to do with our community and politics in general. In March of last year, we came in and shut down all of our communities, basically saying that the pandemic and the coronavirus was more prevalent in small to medium businesses while giving big businesses a pass. In the later part of March, I'm sure you guys all remember when the stock market dropped at 1,000 points all in one day.
Yeah, I do.
And a friend of mine was running a manufacturing business and called me and said, hey, listen, the bank just cut off my line of credit. He had employed 400 to 500 people, and people had started on his side. So he was dealing with two things, one of which the bank cutting him off from his line of credit, and the second of which is making sure he could meet payroll. So he called me on that Monday and he said, Joe, they cut off my line of credit. I can't pay my employees. And I said, relax, they're going to turn your line of credit back on. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. The next day, he committed suicide. On Friday, they turned back on his line of credit. So I was pretty angry. I knew him for 25 years. He was a faithful Christian, conservative, good man, and had built his business with blood, sweat, and tears. And so I knew at that point I had to get involved. I had to do something. And so I started the Reopen Colorado movement.
I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him.
Kill this one.
The restaurant, I think they're doing that.
Having a big effect on what happened in Colorado. And so from there, as we took the Constitution and we threw it away, and we watched as they had this forcibly applied mandate for people to shut their businesses, shut their churches, keep kids masked and at home, I started to realize that there was a lack of accountability in our environment. And it's not something that I had paid attention to a whole lot of before, because I went about my business doing business. And I got involved on the periphery by giving money to different candidates and speaking up about certain issues. But I never stepped out in such a way where I was willing to risk, or I was willing to stand up and make sacrifices. So quickly after the Reopen Colorado movement took off, I started becoming attacked by the Antifa movement and the radical leftists. That put me in a little bit of a shock, because I was trying to figure out why these journalists would write that about us that weren't true. And we stepped out with a guy named John T. Tigan, who's, if you've ever seen the movie 13 Hours, he is a Benghazi hero that, was in Benghazi when the Ambassador Chris Stevens was killed. So we set out when Antifa and the communist Marxist movement, the BLM movement, when they started going into our communities and basically burning down the communities, looting and stealing and robbing those communities, we stepped out and said, we're going to step out and protect our communities. And if you want to peaceably assemble. If you want to protest, that is your constitutional right. But you're not going to put down, intimidate, and scare people in the community. So soon after that, I was labeled a militiaman, and they wrote all these bad stories. So, fast forward, we were building an organization called FEC United, standing for Faith, Education, and Commerce, the three pillars of our society. And what I started to realize is that having an organization that gave people in the community the ability to control their own community and to take control of the things that are standing together and having this power of numbers, but be able to fortify those things in our community that are most important to us, first being faith. So we in the faith environment that churches were forced to close, that pastors basically closed the doors. Well, spiritual food is as important as the food you eat. And these churches weren't given the opportunity to walk. And so,
I wonder who's fooling with this. It's Democrats. I know Democrats. I love these hush puppies. Oh. I'm gonna eat my own.
They're addictive.
You want some more?
Thank you, though.
Carol, how many people were here? How many? It's like more people.
Okay, try again, Joe.
Unmute.
Lori's muted.
Microphone, unmute.
Unmute.
Yeah.
Susan's cat. I know. I should have told that guy I can't leave. Yeah, that would have could have showed up. Yeah, I'm sorry. He's very patient.
Why don't you try to make, he's probably got himself on video. Why don't you try to make arrangements with him to do a video presentation later on? And just call it quits.
Okay, I don't know why this is happening.
Well, Google's putting it on, so it could have something to do with that.
Yes, please. Do you have his phone number? Yes, I do.
Hey, Diane.
Google more than I do? Google more than I do.
I don't press anything that's electronic online.
Yes, I do.
Anything.
Even though our government endorses it, you don't trust
Yeah, hey Joe. I don't know what's happening, but we're going from it being super loud to not being able to hear you at all. So it's just not working. I'm not sure what else we can do. Do you have any suggestions? Okay. Well, I can hear you, but I'm on my phone. I can't tell them. No, they cannot hear you. I can hear you.
Still in the hospital.
Cell phone speaker on the microphone.
Do you want to just let him talk through your phone and onto the microphone? I think that's
Okay, I'm just going to turn it on the speaker on my phone.
Yeah, go for it.
yeah.
Is he a little jaundiced? Or just
That's the newest edition. I'm a grandfather. Just 9 pounds 4 ounces. He's big.
Go.
Alright. It's not a path that I would choose for myself, but I like to say for such a time as this. You know, I've never been one to step out of that comfort zone that I've had because I've been blessed immensely financially. I've been blessed with a beautiful kids and a wife, and I want to do it back in my community. But as I got more involved in trying to help people, as my community started burning down around me, I found myself in a unique place where I had to make a decision. I had to make a decision if I was going to do for myself, which frankly, just so you guys know, I could go live on a beach CIA or some other intelligence unit because he has a doctorate in nuclear engineering from Cal Berkeley. So I put all that information aside. I got to the information based on the Antifa journalist, and after I had talked about and uncovered some of these journalists, I went back to doing the things that were necessary to fulfill and build the organization FBC United to help strengthen our community. We all saw what happened on November 3rd, and yet the media and the tech companies and everyone else with their fact checkers tried to convince us that what we saw was not fraud. Now, at the time, I knew that there was fraud. We all knew they'd been talking about fraud, but you couldn't put your finger on it because I think the world was just in shock at what happened on the 3rd and what happened the day after. So that Friday, I was up elk hunting, and somebody sent me an article, and inside that article it talked about the election issues in Georgia, and lo and behold, the spokesperson in that article was Eric Cooper. So there's a moment in which your heart sinks, right? There's a moment in which you start to realize that you've been doing all of this and going through this, and you happen to be on this call, and now you have to make a decision on, wow, did I really have the ability to have an effect on the election? And I need to do more research, so I dug into Eric Cooper's social media history. I went through and was able to gain access to his Facebook and some other social media platforms and take that information, and it aligned with him being an Antifa member. But it was much more sinister than that. Here's a guy that if you go back in time since the early 1990s was a skinhead. Here's a guy that's been arrested multiple times. Here's a guy that posted the Antifa manifesto on his Facebook page, had created posts that were anti-police, anti-Trump, anti-American rhetoric. And it wasn't that, hey, I disagree with this or I disagree with that or even using strong language. It was more the hate-filled nature of his posts. Things like kill the police. Things that you and I would find not just offensive, but going against the grain of anything that would represent sensibilities for a person. But as you get further into the story about Eric Cooper, I started doing more research on Dominion. I started doing more research on their prevalence across our country. They run nearly every election in 28 states. They have a presence in 20 states. That's Dominion voting systems. The adjudication process, which is the process inside of the election system that Dominion has, that levels intent on an individual ballot that is sent to adjudication to figure out what the intent is of that voter. That patent is owned by Eric Cooper. Well, as you know, many of the places that we've looked at, such as Fulton County, Georgia, as in Antrim County, Michigan, and Maricopa County, and things that are happening in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Colorado, the list goes on. We saw irregularities tied to adjudication. We saw irregularities tied to phantom ballots, state ballots. 200, 300, 500% of people that could vote in a particular precinct having 2, 3, 4, 500% more people that voted than were actually registered to vote in those precincts. Again, if you look at simple math and science, it would tell you that the improbability of all of this stuff happening all at once without some sort of controlled environment or manipulation would be nearly impossible. Yet we've been asked to ignore all of those facts. So I dug in and I reported on Eric Cooper, knowing at that time my life would never be the same. Now I want to tell you that courage is more infectious than fear. I personally don't want to be in this fight. I'm an introvert, not an extrovert. I don't particularly need fame or want fame. I don't want people to know my name. I want to be able to go about my business, live my life, take care of my family, serve those most vulnerable among us. I'm a reverse tither. I've given more of my salary away to inner city youth than most people make in a year. I've been blessed with success, and I've shared that success in a lot of different ways. My dad is black, my mom is white, my whole family's interracial. My business partner is a gay, married Jewish father of two. My entire company looks like the United Nations with nearly I will tell you that they've overplayed their hand. There's so much evidence of fraud inside the system and people associated with it that it's like a volcano that you try to tap. Sooner or later, that volcano is going to go off. And that's what we're seeing now. So we're seeing in Maricopa County, it's what we're seeing in Michigan, we're seeing in Georgia, and now we're seeing that these other multiples of states have gone down and looked at how this audit works. We're seeing the Democrats say, hey, listen, we're going to stop you from looking at any of the ballots if you're not Dominion or if you're not the Secretary of State like they did in Colorado. So we are winning. But the second thing I want to tell you is that the only way that we complete this defense of our nation is to play offense. We have to eradicate our country of these electronic voting systems. We have to clean up our voter rolls. And we have to do things to make sure the hard work today, the sacrifice today, to make sure that we protect our elections, not just for the next 2 years, 4 years, but for generations to come. They are coming for every part of our society. And it's our job as Republicans to stand up, to run for office, to eliminate what we're dealing with today, which, and this is going to be a hard thing for me to say to you, is that the left and the right wings of our government, the Republicans and Democrats, are two wings of the same bird. And the hard part about me saying that they're two wings of the same bird is that there are good people who are Republicans. There are sensible people that stand up for the will of the American people. But far too often, they stood up and said, there's nothing to see here, just like the radical left did. They stood as proxies for the left. The evidence that I've seen in this election is not disputable. The evidence that I've seen as it relates to the amount of fraud that existed, not just in some states, but in most states, and it's not just Dominion, it's Smartmatic, which is basically connected in many ways to Dominion and ES&S, is that these systems were designed to defraud the American voter. They were designed that way. They were designed to have holes in them. So as I talk to you about what the Democrats and Republicans do, I talk to you with a little bit of trepidation. Because it seems to me, and I hope this isn't in your state, but my guess is based upon the fact that there is an establishment that's been created across our country, is that you're dealing with a compromised Republican Party, even in your state. And I'm not telling you everyone's compromised, but I'm telling you we have to look at the reasons why we do things inside of our party. We have to look at the things that people do, the decisions that they make. Are they standing in the way of getting to the truth? So, the hard part about this is that as I've gone through this and looked at what's happened over the last 3 to 4 months, people often say to me, Joe, what can we do? And I would say that there's a lot of things that you can do. But you have to start can screw up. But if more and more men decide to step up and make decisions to stand together, then we can stand either in front, which I prefer in front of the women and the grandmothers, and help fortify the position to protect us as a country. So I'm going to challenge the men in the room. And beyond that, now I want to talk about what's happening to our country. And by the way, I want to apologize. This is kind of a weird deal. I think that I've never done a on the phone, on a Zoom. We have a massive amount of issues that we're facing in the country. Massive. And all of those things are designed to create chaos. We have the border issue. And I would tell you that the border issue it's dire. But then I would ask you why. I'm not going to be very popular when I say this, but the radical, many of them support pedophilia. We've seen the problem with Pincus and Eichmann, Epstein and Weinstein, and all of these people on the left that have this affection for trafficking of women and children. It's a big problem. But the border being open allows for us to have to take care of massive amounts of people, but it also, these are people that have no social security number. They have no name. These are women and children coming across to be picked up and trafficked, and no one would ever report them as missing. So there's bigger problems that just, and there are problems of having criminal people coming across the border. We have another issue dealing with these pedophiles and rapists and people that would traffic women and children. And there's no accountability. We talk about the vaccine. I don't know if any of you saw this. The CDC and the WHO just came out that we should not be giving the vaccine to children. Massive problem. No accountability. FDA-approved emergency. And I'm not telling you that you shouldn't get the vaccine if that's what you want to do. But what I'm saying is that at some point we've got to make sure that the things that they're giving to adults and that they're putting out there in the marketplace, they're safe for our children. And with a virus that kills less than 0.00006% of kids or kids and adults under the age of 30, why would we be putting something in their veins when their chances of dying from it are less than being hit by a Mack truck on the 4th floor of the building?
Hey Joe, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you please explain to our audience exactly how Dominion Voting Systems skews the votes?
Did you get the diagram that I did sent over?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I'll back up on the voting system stuff. I know you guys have the legislature wants to pass something on that, correct? They want to use Dominion voting systems in your state?
We have used Dominion, yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So the system itself has multiple places by which it can be compromised. We can start with the mail-in voting, right? So you have a primary adjudication that happens on the ballot, right? And then the signature is actually verified. The signature system is verified against the secondary system. Typically, it's a driver's license bureau, or in the request for a absentee ballot, the signature on that would then match up to the signature that's on the envelope. So the first step in the voting process on the absentee ballots is to match the signature. So they match it against what they have on record now. So as those ballots go through the process, and they're either adjudicated, right, or cured based upon the signature being accurate, they move to another part of the process where it's a separation of the ballots from the envelopes themselves. So once they're separated from the ballots and envelopes themselves, you've seen already that envelopes have disappeared. They're supposed to keep things for a minimum of 25 months, but you see that they take the ballots and they put them in one place, take the envelopes in a different place, and the envelopes are destroyed. That's the first place by which you could actually have fraud. The second place is that as you start feeding these ballots through the machine, the tabulation system, those intent of that ballot in contrary to the ballot itself. So when you have fake ballots, or you run through multiple ballots, you run through stacks of ballots, and as you saw on many of the camera angles down in Fulton County, Georgia, those ballots will run through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different times. As you run them through the system and it goes to adjudication, they can bulk adjudicate. They can literally take a stack of 1,000 ballots, push a button and say, all of these ballots go towards Biden, even if they didn't have a box filled in. Now, is that a safe and secure system? Is that a system that you think would protect the vote of the American people? I would say no. Well, through this entire process, if you know who walked in and voted, and you know who actually voted on the absentee ballot, you also know who didn't vote. Right? So if you have fan ballots and you have fake ballots, those ballots have to be assigned to someone who voted. So one of the things that we experience in all the swing states is that the system would come down at 11 and 12 o'clock at night, the system would crash. It would go down, and it would come back up. And when it came back up, we saw these switching happening in different areas. So I have the ability to show you a couple of slides, and if you're okay with it, I'll show you some of those slides.
Yes.
Want me to do that?
Yes. Yes.
All right, so it's going to take me a few minutes while I'm talking to you to do this, but I think that this might give you a better indication of what we're dealing with. And that way, I should be giving you a look into it. And this is going to blow your mind. By the way, this is information, so all the information, once I got sued by Eric Cooper, I thought it was my obligation to dig as far into Dominion as I possibly could and figure out where the fraud exists. Okay. Let's show you this slide. Okay, you guys see this?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so this is Bibb County, Georgia. Now, this was data that was taken from the New York Times guide. It's a combination of the precinct county time stamps for comparative time series analysis. Okay? So, we went through and asked a bunch of questions. We looked at the Secretary of State's information and broke down every bit of the information on a one-to-one basis. In other words, line by line, every piece of code, every piece of information came through the system. If you look here on the editor reporting county updates and editor reporting precinct updates, all you have to do is change one word or one characterization for it to erase the previous characterization and not be seen. So if you look at this, you have the reporting county updates on the left for Trump and Biden. On 11/4 at 2:11 in the morning, there were 29,391 ballots for President Trump. At 11/4 at 2:11 in the morning, there were 17,218 votes for Biden. You'll notice that this thing right here, where it says county and where it says precinct, on 11/4 at 2:19, which is 8 minutes later, Biden reported on editor reporting precinct updates 17,218 votes. And Biden reports at the same time at 11/4 at 2:19 in the morning, editor reported precinct updates of 29,391. The correlation between these two is identical. So what they did is they took the ballots that represented President Trump and they switched them over to Biden and continued going through the ballots, or excuse me, the count. So the significance of that, I think I don't probably have to tell you what the significance of that is. I think you understand the significance of that. As we start looking at, see if I can get into the anomalies information here.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
would those machines have to be connected to the internet for that to have happened?
No. No, look, there's a lot of information out there that would say, hey, you have to have an internet connection. Now, just so you know, what we found in Antrim County is that they had a modem card that was actually on the motherboard itself. Right? So they had a wireless modem inside of these machines, yet they told all of us that there was no modem. Well, we know from doing an inspection of the equipment itself that that's not true. Now, many of you have probably heard that, oh, that's all been debunked. Well, it hasn't been debunked. I've seen it. I've seen it up close and personal. But all you need to do to defraud the American people was have a box the size of a cell phone sitting on a table that had all the information related to the people that voted and the people that didn't vote. That's all. Because once you close this is why the system has to go down. And the reason why, by the way, that the State Department listened to me, the people listened to me when I went to Washington on January 5th, was because I told them what was going to happen at the Georgia Senate election. I go, look, the Republicans are going to be winning, the system's going to go down. When the system goes down and it comes back up, the Democrats are going to be winning. And here's why. And they go, oh, well, and so they watched it happen on January 5th. We watched it happen. We watched it in real time as the system in Georgia crashed. At about the same time as it crashed at all the other swing states around the country. So we know based on this that if you had this little box and it sat there and it had the people that didn't vote, you could take fraudulent fake ballots, put them through the system, and have that thing just assign people that had never voted to those particular ballots. And you would never know because they're not people that have physically voted. It's a con. It's the big con and the small con. And you look at things that have happened over the course of this election cycle and how hard they're pushing to suppress the ability to do an audit. If there's nothing to hide, then why not audit the system? Why not make the American people feel as if they can be There is a saying that you don't cut the tongue out of the person that's lying. You cut the tongue out of the person who's telling the truth. And that's what they're doing in this country. I have mountains of data on Dominion voting systems. And the fact that they're hiding, saying that they don't want us to get under the hood and look at it, that is what the whole system is designed on. It's designed on the ability to have a check and balance. But we have a judiciary that is compromised. We have a legislature that is compromised. We have a presidency that is compromised. And the coup against the American people is in essence, the ability to have the them versus us. Pretty soon, it will become very evident that the 80 to 90% of our communities, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we've been marginalized by these factions on the far left and the far right, who frankly just want to rule over us. They want to enslave us. They want to treat us as if we don't matter. We're a sharecropper, pay your taxes, do what you're supposed to, and we'll tell you what to inject in your body. We'll tell you what the election results are, much like they've done in other countries around the world. See, they practiced this, and then they perfected it, and then they put it out there, and they expected us just to accept it. But we didn't accept it, because the corruption became more evident. I've got many more of these things that I could show you on the data transmission if you'd like to see them.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah.
So we use math and science. And it used to be the math and science meant something, but not so much anymore. Now 2 plus 2 equals 5. Math is racist, and we don't need to trust what is right in front of us. So we looked at all of this data. I'm using Georgia as an example, and I'll switch over to Pennsylvania as well and show you some of the information there. There was a set of precincts in Pennsylvania. I'll use this as an example. A set of precincts in Pennsylvania that not one out of those 11 precincts, not one vote went to President Trump, or excuse me, went to Mitt Romney in the 2012 election. Not one. Which the probability of that happening is you have a better chance of winning the lottery every day for the rest of your life than for that happening. So as we look at different places around the country, and we get into the ballot and we use what's called an isolation forest algorithm to look for fraud anomalies, we were able to flag certain areas based upon the likelihood of someone voting for Biden or voting for Trump based upon the median across that same county in those precincts. Now what that means is if you're on the east side of the street and somebody else lives on the west side of the street, there's 20 houses on each side of the street. That road will not determine whether or not someone votes one way or another. But what we found was in these precincts is that that's exactly what happened. You would have a road, let's call it County Line Road, and on County Line Road on the east side, 84% voted for President Trump, but on County Line Road west side, nearly the opposite or worse would vote for Biden. So you can start looking at how ballots were formatted on the walk-in, people walking in and voting in person, and how the absentee ballots favored Biden in this way. Now, I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but as you start looking through some of these precinct details, you can look at the different variations between Biden and Trump, and then understanding the difference. And people would say, well, Republicans vote in person more than Democrats do, and Democrats were more likely to use the absentee ballot system. Well, that would be correct if you weren't looking at lines, literally lines written in the sand, of saying a road, literally a road. It's as if somebody took a wall and built a wall down the road, and everyone on the left side is going to vote 84% for Trump, and on the right side, 100% are going to vote for Biden. You would say that mathematically speaking, that would be impossible. Would you not?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so this is why it would be easier if I was there. I can file something you need to understand that's give you more. Okay, hold on a second while I find this other chart. I understand the charts, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're... Okay, here we go. Thank you for being patient with me.
You're great.
Yes, you think you're wonderful.
Okay, so this is really interesting. This is in Allegheny County, so this is in Pennsylvania. This just shows you the way you can manipulate a machine by erasing laws. And by the way, the erasing of laws and the ability to get access to that information is one of the ways you can backtrack and go through and make sure that the information entered in the machine was not done in a fraudulent way. And because many of these laws and sudden the ballots are added to that 64,000, putting it at 90,993. And you can see how that follows a normal line of regression. Here, President Trump lost 145,241. It was back down to 20,000. Those ballots mysteriously disappeared. So if you look at Allegheny County, and you look at the timestamp, so this is all the information coming from their machine, not mine, right? And you look at the initial call at 1:31 in the morning, and then you have these 20,219 ballots. These are election day ballots, votes, and on 11/4 were added into the system, and then it was reduced by 20,219. Again, you had another dip of 1,348. If you go back up in time at 11/4, you lost another 829, and then you lost another 1,500 here. And by the way, if you look at downstream, 3 days later, he lost an additional 1,863 votes. If you look at the votes in comparison in Chester County, the same thing happened. Mysteriously, in the middle of the deal, he loses 25,000 votes, he loses 49,000 votes, he loses 9,600 votes, he loses 6,684 votes. So these are all election day and absentee ballots. You can start seeing this huge decline in votes and ballots for President Trump in Chester County, a totally different county. You look at Lehigh County, same thing, 66,179 ballots. You can start to see a pattern here, correct? 66,179 ballots just disappeared for President Trump. Disappeared. And then you follow the same line of regression all the way up to the 10th, which is 7 days later. So you look at how much was stolen for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. If you just use cursory notes based upon the information that their system had, you would notice that he lost 145,241 in Allegheny, 49,539 in Chester, and 23,629. And by the way, the Secretary of State in Pennsylvania has not been able to explain away any of these irregularities, nor will they allow for an audit of these ballots to date. And I would say again, if you have nothing to hide, then why would you not put the voice of the American people to be preserved? Why would you not let the American people? The information is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's not, I'm not telling you that we have any problem in our election system. I'm telling you that our election system is the problem. And that you're not going to be able to fix it by tweaking the voting system, the electronic voting system that's there. You're not going to be able to tweak it. You're not going to be able to change it. You're not going to be able to fix it. The only thing that we can do to get rid of the problems that we have is to get rid of the system. And if we have to, dip our finger in ink and make sure that one vote is counted for every citizen that should have the right to vote. Short of that, so, I mean, I can do this all day long. I can sit here and show you these things. I will tell you that the more information that comes forward about the election fraud and the tighter the grip has become in our judiciary, the tighter the grip has become in our court system, we're seeing massive amounts of advocacy in the court system that works against the interests of the American people. We have a judge in Colorado that's hearing the Eric Cooper case that is ignoring law and standing up as an activist for Eric Cooper and getting discovery, getting access to the person that is the Antifa member that gave me access to that phone call. They want to get his information. Right? The problem with getting his information is that that guy will be dead before they'll end up killing him. So we're dealing with an evil system that is trying to really, really hard to keep us from getting to the truth and to punish those that would oppose their evil intentions. Any other questions?
Joe, if I may call you Joe, this is Secretary of State Kyle Hardman here in Louisiana, and I very much appreciate those ladies asking me to participate. I'm going to be in Denver in, I think, 3 weeks. I think it's the second week of July. I'd like the opportunity to come and visit with you. You put forth some very interesting information here, obviously. There are different processes and procedures that we have here in Louisiana that's different from what you've described. But I certainly would like to go over this information in light of that and with our procedures that we have to see, to get your opinion of it and to move forward. Because we are looking at... Obviously, we've been working very hard in Louisiana to change our voting system because we have machines that are over 30 years old and never been connected to the internet. And we don't have electronic poll books, which is a very positive from what I can tell, because you can't download something that's not electronic. And because we have paper poll books, we're able to prevent, I think, what I've seen, quite disturbingly seen, quite frankly. So if you have some time, I'll give my staff, I'm trying to remember the dates. Joel, do you remember the dates I'm going to be there? I think it begins, I'll arrive on the 9th, Friday the 9th, and I'll be there through that next week because I'm going through some certification classes for election administration, and I certainly would like to have the benefit of your knowledge that you've been collecting.
Yeah, and I have a team that I can meet with you while you're here. Look, and I often say I don't have any dog in the hunt, right? I just want truth. I just want the people to feel as if their voice matters. And frankly, I have so much information I could overwhelm you with it, but I think that I can put together a presentation that will show you the risks of doing business with any of the three companies, ExNet, Smartmatic, or Dominion Voting Systems. The closest thing that we've been able to find in doing all of our research to a ethical electronic voting system that has an auditability that makes it nearly impossible, not impossible, but less likely you're going to have fraud, is the clear ballot system that is used in 2 counties in Colorado. So I can also show you it has less than 3% of the code that is existing in those other systems, and more clean-cut, mathematical 1 + 1 = 2 scenario in a count ballots.
I would appreciate that very much, and I think Ms. Alexander can give me your phone number so we can schedule it, right? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe.
I just, on behalf of this group, I want to thank you for your patience with us today. This was quite a technological feat for us. We've never done anything like this before, and things were not on our side, but your persistence was wonderful, so thank you so much. I know you can't really see us, but I want you to know that this has been a room of people giving you their full attention, and I think we could probably all sit here for another hour and hear everything else you have to say, but I have a job, and that's my computer, and they're going to start looking for me. So we're going to have to let you go. But thank you so much.
God bless you all.
God bless you. You are in our prayers, sir.
What a patriot.
Kyle, thank you so much. It's the open mind. I know you real well. We know you. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we thank you very much. I want y'all to please stay tuned because we're very excited also about our July program. We have some conversations in the works, but it's very possible that we'll have a very dynamic young man. I believe he's African American, right, Diane?
Oh, Kendall Quails. Yeah.
Kendall, yeah.
Quails.
And so we may have a very fascinating program and a movement, a groundswell movement by this young man to come back against critical race theory and the 1619 Project. Okay, really quick, and then we'll adjourn.
Yes.
I was contacted by Mr. Kendall Quails. He was a first-time runner, and he for a public office. He ran the nomination, as he's a black man, at the Republican Party for the U.S. House. He lost against the incumbent, but he scored 45% of that vote to 55. He was an entrepreneur. But what he did, he started an organization named Taking Charge that is going to be chapters all over the country. And he had said he wanted to be on my show, Diane Andrews in Black and White. So I contacted Debbie, and I contacted Terry, really, who contacted you all, Debbie, about the next meeting, having him speak. Because he has started a movement on critical race theory in the 1619 Project. So I copied you on it, Kathy, too. You saw that the other day, right, Kathy Edmondson. So we're going to try to bring him down here. He is a force to be reckoned with. He understands what's going on in America, as a lot of Black African-American people do. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to thank you, Kyle, again. I mean, you really are a hero. Thank you for coming. And
I don't know about a hero.
you really are a servant leader. We love you. We're behind you. And we'll be anxious to hear how your conversation in Denver goes.
Oh, he can come back.
So with that, this meeting is adjourned, and I look very forward to seeing y'all next month.
Yes.
Oh, tickets, prizes, wait, prizes. Okay, here comes Miss Drew.
I'd like to thank everyone who purchased our raffle tickets for fundraising.
Yes.
The first winner of a $50 gift certificate to Drusilla Import. Last three numbers, blue ticket, is 898.
Can we audit? 20 seconds. Awesome.
The second winner, the last three digits, 914. 914. The last three digits of the blue ticket. 914. Oh.
Wait.
Yes.
Kathleen.
He should know then. He's from Minnesota.
We have two door prizes. Red ticket. First winner, last three digits, 693. And the next winner, 692.